So hopefully up to this point, I've sort of sketched out the types of things you might see in this docuseries. If you are a reptile person, a reptile keeper, you're probably cringing. If you're not a reptile keeper and you just want to see some crazy things on TV, then you're probably looking forward to it. You may be somewhere in between. I think it's well known that after Tiger King came out, the Big Cat Public Safety Act was passed. And so this is actually bolted onto the Lacey Act that we talked about earlier, but this prohibits people from keeping big cats in captivity unless you're accredited zoo and whatnot, which meant all private ownership had to basically disappear. And we're seeing something very similar with the Captive Primate Safety Bill, which has not been passed yet, but it is something that I'm sure will be passed. Same sort of thing. It's going to prohibit the ownership of primates. Now, will we see something similar in the reptile world after this documentary gets put out? I should say the documentaries aren't necessarily the factor that brought these bills to the floor, but they're often the thing that pushes the public into thinking that keeping a tiger is not a good idea. So in all cases, the Public Safety Act, the Big Cat Act, and the Primate Act were already acts before these documentaries came out. It just gave them fuel for the fire. So will we see similar legislation that goes after reptile keepers after this docuseries comes out? Maybe. I think it's also clear for me to point out that I think that the Big Cat Safety Act and the Primate Act are actually good law. I think that's an important piece to make sure that people in the community are safe. Now, this is where I have to defend myself from sounding like a hypocrite. How can I say that the Big Cat Safety Act and the Primate Act are good, but now I'm saying, please don't come after the reptile keepers. We don't need that. Well, let me explain. Keeping large cats and keeping primates is a genuine danger to the public. Now, I'm sure there are people who did a great job privately with those either primates or tigers that were actually hurt by those bills. But in general, if you're keeping an animal like that, you are putting the public at danger. There's just no way around it. You're talking about apex predators or animals that just have absolutely insane strength. If they get out, it's a danger. Now, there are many reptiles that actually fit into that category as well. There's many large species of crocodilian or large constricting snakes or venomous animals that also pose a danger to the public, and I would actually be for regulating those in some way as well. But of course, my worry is that we're going to see a docuseries that shows all these crazy things, this illegal activity, animals that are dangerous, ending up in the communities, and that's going to be tied to somebody that keeps a leopard gecko at home. At the end of the day, the animals that we keep as pets or companions are all descendants of wild animals at some point down the line, and reptiles are really no different. When Tiger King came out and the Big Cat Safety Act was passed, nobody thought people shouldn't keep house cats. Even though house cats do a tremendous amount of damage on the environment, nobody went after the house cat people because Tiger King told them that tigers were dangerous. But I am worried that reptiles will be folded into the mix just as one lump sum because most people have no connection with those animals. They don't care about them at all. So we might as well throw them all in the same basket. Now, I want to end this video to show you, especially the non-reptile keeper, how positive reptile keeping can be and how beneficial it has been in the private sector. I can't speak for the public sector, but I want to share with you just a few short stories of how keeping reptiles has been a benefit to our culture and our society, and how I really hope, again, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this docuseries. So I'm just going to list through a few names here. The first one is Lori Tarini. Lori Tarini is a snake keeper out of the United States, and she wouldn't say this, but everybody else who knows her would. She's one of the world-leading experts in snake intelligence. There's just no other way to put it. She has been instrumental in understanding how snakes learn, how they can be conditioned, their cognitive abilities in general, and that has fully come out of the private sector. She now works with the university doing research all the time. I believe she's working on a master's right now as well. And again, this is totally out of the private sector. A massive amount of scientific literature will come out of this endeavor by Lori, and as a hobby, we couldn't be more proud of her. Is it going to be Reptile King interesting for a docuseries? No, because most people aren't interested in how snakes learn, but that's the point. I want to tell you that there are people doing really amazing things in our hobby that are not going to be portrayed in this series. The next person I want to mention is Dr. Zach Loafman. Dr. Loafman is a biologist in Virginia, I want to say. He's a crayfish biologist, so that's his day job, but on his evenings and weekends, he's a reptile keeper and a reptile enthusiast. And last year, he wrote this book, The Natural History and Captive Care of False Water Cobras, Barren Racers, Musaranas, and Other Xenodontine Snakes. Now, there's an incredible amount of research in this book. If you were somebody that wanted to do some scientific research on these species, and you didn't know anything about them, this would be a great place to start. So again, this is something that's purely come from the private sector that has added to our scientific literature. Now, how about conservation? I've talked to two different Nicks. One is Nick Stacy out of Texas, who works with Atelopus barbertonii, which is a type of toad, and an Amazonian toad. He was the very first person to breed them in captivity, and he directly sends money from that project to their conservation in situ. The other Nick is Nick Gordon of the Abronia Alliance. He's working with preserving different species of Abronia. Again, these are animals that their wild population is being decimated in South America and Central America, and he's doing his best to preserve different species and make sure we have clean bloodlines of these animals so they do not get wiped off the face of the earth. I could literally continue to go on. There's Dr. Frances Baines out of the UK, who is a vet by training, but she's a reptile enthusiast and has done an incredible amount of work on understanding light and the importance of replicating sunlight for captive animals. And this is not something that's just for the reptile trade. It's something that's transcended into the zoological world, into the captive world. And zoos are constantly talking to reptile keepers about how to light their animals properly because it is such a vital importance when you're keeping reptiles. That's for another video. But there is so much intelligence and knowledge coming out of this space just due to keeping these animals in captivity that's helping all other animals that are in zoos and in other facilities. So again, my plea to the non-reptile keeper public after watching whatever happens with this documentary series about reptiles is that you take it with a grain of salt. Please know that what you see in that documentary is not an accurate depiction of what most people do. Most people who keep reptile pets are just, they got it for their birthday, they love their pet gecko, and they feed it and care for it every day. But there's a whole group of us who do take it to the next level and are focused on increasing the welfare of the animals that we keep, applying more enrichment, understanding what it means to care for an animal in the most ethical way to increase their welfare to the highest state. And I do believe that most sensible people can understand the difference between someone keeping a small ball python in their bedroom to somebody keeping an actual full-grown male chimpanzee in their garage. But I still think it is so important because of how these documentaries draw people in and convince people that this is the truth. And remember what I said at the beginning, Eric Good isn't concerned about the truth as much as he's concerned about telling a story and making money. As he said, he wanted to make money to put it towards conservation. I can't hold that against him, but it needs to be clear that it's not necessarily going to be the truth.